Palmer McBride said that he knew Oswald prior to the assassination, and he made this statement and signed it on the day after the assassination. I, Palmer E. McBride, hereby furnish the following free and voluntary statement to John R. Palmer, who I know to be a special agent of the FBI. I have been advised that this statement can be used in a court of law. No threats or promises have been made to me. I was born on November 29th, 1937, at New Orleans, Louisiana. I enlisted in the United States Air Force on November 25th, 1960. And since June 15th, 1961, I have been assigned to Patrick Air Force Base, Florida. I am presently an airman second class assigned to the 6,550th Maintenance Group with Air Force serial number AF whatever. In about June 1955, I went to work as a dental messenger for the Pfisterer Dental Laboratory Company in the 200 block of Dauphine Street, New Orleans, Louisiana. In about December 1957, a young man named Lee Oswald was employed in the same capacity. Because we both enjoyed classical music, I invited him to my home at 1416 Baronne Street, New Orleans, and he did visit my home perhaps 2 or 3 times. I was living with my parents at that time, and during his visits we would listen to records in my room. During his first visit to my home in late 1957 or early 1958, the discussion turned to politics and to the possibility of war. At this time, I made a statement to the effect that President Dwight Eisenhower was doing a pretty good job for a man of his age and background, but that I did feel more emphasis should be placed on the space program in view of Russian successes. Oswald was very anti-Eisenhower and stated that President Eisenhower was exploiting the working people. He then made a statement to the effect that he would like to kill President Eisenhower because he was exploiting the working class. This statement was not made in jest, and Oswald was in a serious frame of mind when this statement was made. Lee Oswald was very serious about the virtues of communism and discussed these virtues at every opportunity. He would say that the capitalists were exploiting the working class, and his central theme seemed to be that the workers in the world would one day rise up and throw off their chains. He praised Khrushchev's sincerity in improving the lot of the worker. In early 1958, I took Oswald with me to a meeting of the New Orleans Amateur Astronomy Association at the home of Walter Gehrke, 208 Hector Ave, Metter, Louisiana. This meeting was presided over by the association president, William Eugene Wolfe, Jr., 2107 Annunciation Street, New Orleans. At this meeting, I recall that Mr. Wolfe told Oswald that if he liked Russia so damn much, why didn't he go over there? I do not know what Oswald had said to bring forth this remark from Wolfe. On one occasion, I took Oswald to the Wolfe residence. Oswald and Mr. William Eugene Wolfe, Sr., a naturalized citizen of German origin, argued because Oswald was telling him of the glories of the workers' state and saying that the United States government was not telling the truth about Soviet Russia. In another conversation, Oswald stated to me he was not a member of the Communist Party, but he suggested that both of us should join to take advantage of their social functions. I did not join the Communist Party, but I do not know whether he did or not. During the period I knew Oswald, he resided with his mother in the Senator Hotel, or a rooming house next door to the Senator Hotel in the 200 block of Dauphine Street, New Orleans. I went with him to his room on one occasion, and he showed me copies of Das Kapital and the Communist Manifesto. Oswald stated he had received these books from the public library and seemed quite proud to have them. In April or May 1958, Oswald stated he was moving to Fort Worth, Texas, with his mother. In about August 1958, I received a letter from him saying he was employed as a shoe salesman in Fort Worth. In this letter, he also stated he had gotten mixed up in an anti-Negro or anti-communist riot on a high school grounds in Fort Worth, Texas. Oswald did not elaborate on this statement. I did not answer this letter, and I have not had further contact or communication with Oswald. On the evening of November 22, 1963, I heard a radio commentator state that Lee Oswald had been arrested as a suspect in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Upon hearing the name, I recalled my association with Lee Oswald in New Orleans, and upon seeing a full-face photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald in the November 23, 1963 issue of the Miami Herald newspaper, I am now quite certain that they are one and the same individual. I particularly recall the large ears, the mustache, and the receding hairline. I also recall that Oswald made statements favoring Russia and communism to other employees at the Pfister Dental Laboratory Company. I do not recall specific statements, but his central theme always concerned the workers throwing off their chains. I have read and initialed each page and all corrections on this 6-page statement. I declare that it is true and correct to the best of my knowledge and belief. Signed, Palmer Edwin McBride. Now, this is from an FBI document. This is not the actual affidavit with the actual signature. I've never seen that, though I do have a handwritten. Or maybe that's what I have seen. I have a handwritten copy of this. It's harder to read, so I'm using the FBI report here. And the FBI wrote this after the statement. Airman McBride said he made no report of Oswald's statement concerning President Eisenhower to any law enforcement agency. McBride now assumes that at the time he felt the statement was made by Oswald to emphasize his anti-Eisenhower feelings and not made in the nature of an actual threat on the life of the president. McBride stated that Mr. Lawrence Williamson, bookkeeper, and Miss Imelda, last name unknown, secretary at Pfister Dental Laboratory Company, would probably recall remarks made by Oswald favoring Russia and communism. Other company officials or employees named Levesque, Cagle, Bischoff, and Klein would probably recall his remarks. He also stated that he was not acquainted with Oswald's close associates and never attended any type of meeting with him except the one meeting of the Astronomy Association. There are problems with this statement, and one problem is the timing of the narratives. As this FBI document points out, it's from December 19, 1963, inasmuch as Oswald was in the U.S. Marine Corps from September 1956 until November 1959, this information is unfounded, and no investigation is being conducted. All investigation at Fort Worth indicates that Oswald was gone from Fort Worth during the entire time he was in the Marine Corps. This is based on information from neighbors. So here, in December of 1963, the FBI is already dismissing the account of Palmer McBride based on the fact that he said he was working with Oswald in 1957 and 1958, and that Oswald by that time was already in the Marine Corps. Actually, they're not dismissing the entire account. Maybe I should read what they're dismissing here. They're saying McBride stated that Oswald was employed as a shoe salesman at Fort Worth, Texas in August 1958 and was mixed up in an anti-Negro or anti-communist riot on high school grounds in Fort Worth. All they're dismissing here is the Fort Worth incident. They're not going to investigate that. But apparently they're not dismissing the rest of Palmer McBride's story, which includes Oswald in 1958 working for Pfister Laboratories, and But they could dismiss that for the same reason that they dismissed this other thing, because Oswald was in the Marine Corps at the time. But they don't do that. It's like they're trying to dismiss the one thing they don't want to investigate while keep the other thing, that is that Oswald worked with McBride at Pfisterer. Even though they don't like 1958, they're not dismissing that specifically. So the FBI is trying to have it both ways here. And of course, there's also this from McBride's statement. Upon seeing a full-face photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald in the November 23, 1963 issue of the Miami Herald newspaper, I am now quite certain that they are one and the same individual. I particularly recall the large ears, the mustache, and the receding hairline. I don't have a copy of the Miami Herald he's talking about, so I don't know what photograph was used. But this is a photograph of Oswald on the day he was arrested. And I suppose you could say his ears are large. I don't know. To me, they look normal. But maybe on the large side of normal. And he needs a shave, but he doesn't have a mustache. And I have never once seen a photograph of Oswald with a mustache. And he's talking about Oswald. Well, Oswald would have been old enough to have a mustache, I guess. But his statement seems to indicate not only that he remembers a person named Lee Oswald who had a mustache, but that he saw the mustache in the photograph in the newspaper. So this seems to invalidate McBride totally. He seems to be a wackadoodle out in left field. So maybe that's another reason the FBI decided to drop him. But John Armstrong, the author of Harvey and Lee, did not drop Palmer McBride. He took this McBride ball and ran with it. John Armstrong prefers the McBride timeline to the official story timeline, and he thinks it, or he has an explanation for that in terms of his Harvey and Lee thesis. So that makes McBride very interesting. He's a character I never would have noticed were it not for John Armstrong. But I don't agree with John Armstrong's conclusions here. But I'm not going to critique Armstrong's conclusions because I'm more interested in what did happen rather than in what did not happen. Now, there are certain things here in the McBride statement that the official storytellers will like. They will like that he threatened to murder Dwight Eisenhower, the President of the United States. That's very nice because it would be consistent with somebody who murdered JFK. And they also liked the report of what Oswald was saying about communism, the workers throwing off their chains and all that. And so there certainly are elements to the McBride statement that the official storytellers would like and the conspirators would like. But apparently they wouldn't like the timing offered. That is, the idea that Oswald was working for this dental lab in 1957 or 1958 is not acceptable to them because Oswald was in the Marine Corps. So it would seem that this would be a statement that would not have been put forth by the conspiracy. But I think it was. I think this McBride statement was something that was arranged for by the conspiracy, and that it has a purpose. And the purpose is to paint Oswald as a dirty commie, even when he was a teenager. And I don't know why the wrong years are given, or the years 57 to 58 are given, when that's incompatible with the official story. Armstrong thinks that it's simply the truth, and the reason McBride was never interviewed by the Warren Commission is because he told the truth about when he worked with Oswald, and because Oswald was in the Marine Corps at that time, that can't be true. for the official story anyway. And Armstrong might be right. That might be what's going on. It might be simply that it was the truth. But for reasons I've already stated, I can't accept that this is a genuine statement. The thing with the mustache, and I think shows that something's wrong here. And Armstrong, I believe, he interviewed McBride in the 1990s, and I don't think he ever asked about that mustache thing. And I think any real researcher would have asked about that. So I'm very suspicious of everybody here. First, I want to make the point here that the McBride statement was not literally written by Palmer McBride. We can see the handwriting of the statement, which is the first part above, is different from the following paragraph, which includes Palmer McBride's signature. Obviously, the handwriting of the statement is different from Palmer McBride's. And if we look at the two witnesses here, both of them special agents of the FBI, we can see that the handwriting of John Palmer, FBI agent, looks like the same handwriting as the statement. So the statement literally was written by John Palmer of the FBI and signed by Palmer McBride. That is not necessarily nefarious. I think it's common practice when a statement is taken by law enforcement that the law enforcement person will do the writing while talking to the witness, and then the witness will sign it. But I think we should keep in mind that even though we have a handwritten copy of the Palmer McBride statement, the handwriting is not Palmer McBride's handwriting, except for that last paragraph there. It's the handwriting of an FBI agent. So the Palmer McBride statement was written by the FBI and signed by Palmer McBride.
Sign the papers.
What do the papers say?
They are merely a statement saying you have not been mistreated while you have been here.
And also note, as the FBI document says, that McBride was in the military at the time the statement was made. Airman Second Class Palmer E. McBride was interviewed at Air Police Headquarters, Patrick Air Force Base, Florida. So, being in the military would give the conspiracy access to McBride because the conspiracy is an inside job, which has access to the military. And being in the military would also give the conspiracy leverage over McBride. Just being in the military, he's used to taking orders and not wanting to endanger, perhaps, his career. But also, he might feel it's his duty as an American soldier to do as told in the Cold War. And he might think that it's a good thing to do anyway to catch this commie traitor Oswald, even if he's lying in his signed statement. Being in the military doesn't prove that his statement is a lie, but, as I said, it provides an explanation for how the conspiracy can be using him this way. So it seems most likely to me that this statement is a production of the conspiracy, that the intent is to portray Oswald as a dirty commie, even when he was 18 or 19 years old, and that the years given are probably correct. That is, he probably did work at Pfisterer from 1957 to 1958, and that whoever made the arrangements for this statement didn't realize they had to change the years of his employment because it's incompatible with what their official story is going to be. I think this is probably a reflection of the compartmentalization of information, and that whoever was handling this statement didn't realize they had to change the years involved. And if this analysis is correct, that is, that McBride worked with Oswald in 57 and 58, while Oswald was in the Marine Corps, that would mean that we have two different people here, as John Armstrong says, Harvey and Lee. And the fact that McBride seems to remember a person who had a mustache, and as far as we know, Lee Oswald never had a mustache, then that might imply that this is Harvey rather than Lee. That is, if we are going to accept that Lee went into the Marine Corps, as I think he did. So this may be what Harvey was doing while Lee was in the Marines. He may have been, or for part of that time anyway, he may have been working with Palmer McBride at the Pfisterer Laboratory. So it could be that whoever arranged for this statement didn't realize that there was a Harvey and Lee, and just assumed, since it was Oswald, that the dates wouldn't be a problem, and that's why we get these incompatible dates, which are probably the truth, coming from Palmer McBride. A contradiction to this idea are these two documents, these Pfisterer documents, which show Oswald having worked for Pfisterer in 1956. This could mean that the idea is just wrong, and that Oswald worked for Pfisterer in 1956, as the official story says, and that's that, and there's no Harvey. It could mean that Oswald worked for them in 56, and Harvey worked for them in 57 and 58. Or it could mean, or it could be that these are simply fraudulent documents. I believe Armstrong takes the last option. I'm not an expert on what Armstrong says, but I think he believes these are concoctions by the FBI. He has some kind of argument about the employer number or something. I forget what that is now. But anyway, I still have a problem with the McBride statement. And so I'm taking, for now at least, the option that these do not represent the reality, that these were produced out of desperation so that we wouldn't think there were two different people using the name Oswald, and that because he can't be working at Pfisterer if he's in the Marine Corps. So I think they had to make it 1956, and that's why we have these documents. But I could be wrong about that. It's hard to argue with documents like this. And going back to the McBride statement here, we can see the two corroborators of Oswald's dirty commie character, William Eugene Wolfe Jr. and William Eugene Wolfe Sr. In early 1958, I took Oswald with me to a meeting of the New Orleans Amateur Astronomy Association at the home of Walter Gerke. This meeting was presided over by the association president, William Eugene Wolfe Jr. At this meeting, I recall that Mr. Wolfe told Oswald that he liked Russia, so if he liked Russia so damn much, why didn't he go over there? I do not know what Oswald said to bring forth this remark from Wolfe. On one occasion, I took Oswald to the Wolfe residence. Oswald and Mr. William Eugene Wolfe Sr., a naturalized citizen of German origin, argued because Oswald was telling him of the glories of the workers' state and saying that the United States government was not telling the truth about Soviet Russia. So McBride names Wolfe Jr. and Sr. as corroborators. And we do have FBI reports of interviews with Wolfe Jr. and Sr. This one is with William Eugene Wolfe Jr. William Eugene Wolfe Jr., 2107 Annunciation Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, advised that he, in 1955, he was president of the New Orleans Amateur Astronomy Association, a high school group that usually met at De La Salle High School, New Orleans. Sometime in 1955, and I'll note here that, as I've gone over already, the official story is this happened in 1956, And the McBride story is that this happened in 1958. But in the FBI report here, they have William Eugene Wolfe Jr. saying it was 1955. Sometime in 1955, the date, month, or season unrecalled, Wolfe received a telephone call from a person who became known to him as Lee. At that time, Lee was about 16 years of age, worked at Pfister's Dental Laboratory along with a Palmer E. McBride, who was also known to Wolfe at that time. Wolfe said he was not sure what caused Lee to contact him, but it was either because of their common friend McBride or because of an advertisement that Lee had seen concerning the Astronomy Association in a magazine called Sky and Telescope, published by Harvard University. At any rate, Lee, during the conversation, inquired about joining the Astronomy Association, and it is his recollection that he invited Lee to attend a coming meeting. At a subsequent meeting of the Astronomy Association, date in 1955, unrecalled, held at Wolfe's residence, 2107 Annunciation Street, New Orleans, Lee was in attendance after the meeting, and after the others had departed, Wolfe and Lee conversed for about 3 hours in the back of the house. According to Wolfe, he does not recall the specifics of the conversation, but remembers that Lee's comments concerning politics and economics were left of socialism, and that Lee was apparently sympathetic with the Red Chinese, as he favored Red China's admission to the United Nations. Their conversation resulted in a long argument, toward the end of which Lee had commented if he could find a communist organization in town, he would join it, but he had not been able to find one. According to Wolfe, he told Lee to leave the house on Lee's remarks that he wanted to join a communist organization. Lee left the house, and Wolfe has neither seen nor heard of Lee since. Wolfe said that the only persons who might have overheard this conversation with Lee would be Palmer McBride, who was presently in the United States Air Force at Cape Canaveral, Florida, and the other person would be Wolfe's father, William Wolfe Sr. He said, however, that he was not sure that McBride was even at the meeting that night. As to his father, Wolfe Sr., he said Wolfe Sr. is recovering from a heart attack, and further, his father's mind tends to wander because of his advanced years. Because of this, Wolfe felt that information provided by his father might be inaccurate. During the interview, Wolfe selected a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald, New Orleans Police Department number, taken August 9, 1963, as being a person who strongly resembled the individual Lee mentioned above. Mr. Wolfe said that the name Hidell meant nothing to him, and he could not connect it to in any way with the person Lee. Now, the FBI apparently also interviewed William Wolfe Sr. We have the document here saying so. William Wolfe Sr., 2107 Annunciation Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, advised that he is a retired merchant seaman. Mr. Wolfe recalled that sometime in the mid-1950s, exact year, month, season, day, or time unrecalled, he remembered an incident in which his son, William Eugene Wolfe, Jr., was apparently arguing with another boy at the rear of the house. Mr. Wolfe said he overheard this boy make some comment which Mr. Wolfe considered communistic. Wolfe said that he could not now recall exactly what the boy said, but remembers he cautioned the boy about making such comments in the Wolfe household. He recalls that the boy replied, "What is wrong with communism?" On hearing this, Mr. Wolfe said that he ordered the boy to leave the house. Mr. Wolfe said that he could not recall any descriptive data regarding this boy, and when shown a photograph of Lee Harvey Oswald, New Orleans Police Department number, failed to identify this individual as anyone known to him. He said the name Hidell meant nothing to him. The first issue I'll deal with here is the matter of William Wolfe Jr. and William Wolfe Sr. In all of these documents, and I mean the McBride signed affidavit and these two FBI reports with the junior and senior Wolfes, these people are referred to as William Wolfe Jr. and William Wolfe Sr. Yet in William Wolfe's Warren Commission testimony, he said that he's not William Wolfe Jr. This from his Warren Commission testimony. The questioner says, "We want to inquire of you concerning possible knowledge that you have of Lee Harvey Oswald during the time that he lived in New Orleans, during the period 1954 to 1955. Before we get to the details of that, however, would you state your full name for the record?" Answer, "My name is William Eugene Wolfe, no Jr." Now, this is not a response to anything said in his Warren Commission testimony. They haven't called him Jr. It can only be a response to the FBI reports calling him Jr. and calling his father Sr. Well, his father, if his name is William Eugene Wolfe, his father's name cannot be William Eugene Wolfe Sr., because then he would be Jr. So I'm not sure what his father's name really is. I mean, I suppose it's possible his father could have the same name and they don't use Senior and Junior. I don't know if that's done or not. But this is unexplained. And anyone who knows the FBI report and the Warren Commission should wonder about this. But there's no attempt made to clarify that. So if the FBI says they are talking to William Wolfe Jr. and William Wolfe Sr. and using the names William Wolfe Jr. and William Wolfe Sr., is the FBI really talking to them? Or is the FBI just writing up some reports using those names? The FBI would have those names because of the statement of McBride saying that their names were Junior and Senior. But McBride might not have known that they weren't Junior and Senior. He might have just called the father Senior because he was William Wolfe's father. And, some people might do that. They might call a father and son Junior and Senior even if their names aren't the same. But it looks like what the FBI did was they took that ball, the Junior-Senior ball, from McBride, and they ran with it, and they probably created a couple of reports to corroborate Lee Oswald's dirty commie character, and they changed the dates. That is, instead of having 57 to 58, they made it 1955. And changing the dates was probably an attempt to correct the McBride dates of the McBride date of 1958, changing it to 1955, but it's an overcorrection for the official story. It has to be 56 for the official story, because Oswald was doing other things in 1955. So I think these FBI reports of interviews with Junior and Senior are probably complete fabrications, putting in details that the FBI wanted there, and not the result of actual interviews. If that's the case, then that would mean that William Wolfe Jr., or William Eugene Wolfe, not Jr., would be cooperating in the chicanery when he speaks to the Warren Commission, because he doesn't deny the facts of these reports, he confirms them. So why would he do that? It could be that William Wolfe, not Jr., like all good Americans, despises dirty commies and is happy to cooperate in blaming a dirty commie for killing the president. And it could be that he's just a friend of McBride and he's supporting McBride. And that could be true even if the FBI really did talk to him. And maybe even William Wolfe, not Jr., has FBI in the family. This, in fact, is the reason that I revisited this topic, because in my last video, as I read from this document here, Lee Bowers, when he called the FBI, called Paul E. Wolfe. This Wolfe has two F's, which is much less of a difference than not Junior, I think. And so you might say, well, it's not the same name because it has two F's. foreign names very often will get different spellings when people with those names come to the United States. So, and it's not all that common a name in the United States. It's not real rare either, but it seemed uncommon to me. And I think Paul E. Wolf here is Lee Bauer's handler with the FBI. And then that made me think of William E. Wolf. So I think that's possibly a family connection here. And that might be one of the reasons that William E. Knott Jr. would cooperate with the FBI in their chicanery. As I have above here, William E. Wolf told the Warren Commission that he and Oswald were both about 16, and this would make sense if it had been in 1955. But in the Garrison investigation, he said Oswald was 2 years younger than he was, and that this was right after he got back from New York City, within a year. Well, Oswald got back from New York City in 1954, so within a year, again, it makes it 1955. Of course, the official story is 1956, and now he's saying Oswald was about 15 when he was about 17, and they were both born in the same year, about a month apart. So the fact, it's one thing if you can't remember a year. I think that's pretty common. But if you're a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old or a 17-year-old and the other boy is 2 years younger than you, that's something that is going to be part of your memory. That's something you notice at that age. Maybe if you're 60, you wouldn't notice a 58-year-old is 2 years younger. But if you're 17, you notice a 15-year-old is about 2 years younger than you are. And to me, this just shows this isn't a real story, that Wolf is remembering a story that he was told, not a story that he lived. And I think that means that this is FBI chicanery. This is the FBI trying to patch up the McBride statement. And why not just re-interview McBride? I think the reason is McBride told the truth about the years, and that it was 1958 that he introduced Oswald to Wolf, and that is unacceptable to the official story, because that means Oswald was working at Pfisterer at a time that he was in the Marine Corps. So they have to change that, and I think they changed it by having Wolf lie, and I think that this reveals that Wolf was lying because he can't remember, because he makes the boy younger and older in different recountings of the events. And I think this is further corroboration that there was a Harvey, or there were two of them, Harvey and Lee, as John Armstrong says. And the simplest example of that kind of corroboration comes from the testimony of Ruth Paine to the Warren Commission, where she says of Lee Harvey Oswald, "It was more like Harvey than I had seen him before." And I can't imagine why she would say that unless Lee and Harvey were different people. Unless she's talking about a split personality, but there's no reason to think that from her testimony here. And of course, Mr. Jenner doesn't ask who Harvey is. And I think this shows that there was a Harvey and Lee, that Ruth Paine knew both of them. And I think we see that again here, that there's a Harvey and Lee, and one of them's in the Marine Corps, while the other one is working for Pfisterer.